thing that would make it worse is if somebody changed the lyrics to a song by his beloved Village People to drive it home.
Got to be a taco. Taco, taco man. I want to be a taco man.
This could be the new YMCA. They can play it at rallies. You can do TACO.
You're about to uncover how a simple late-night joke exposed the fragile egos of one of the most powerful families in America. Spoiler, it involves a viral song and some White House panic. Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How could a goofy parody song turn into a full-blown crisis in the Trump world? Well, leave it to Jimmy Kimmel and his comedic brilliance to stir the pot.
There's been an outpouring of taco-themed AI on social media featuring our Crunchwrap Supreme Leader in all manner of chicken garb, rooster hair.
Taco, taco man. I want to be a taco man. Taco, taco man.
Master five-piece family meal, all in celebration of our El Pollo Loco. How does it feel to be on the other end of the nickname game? Not great, does it?
Back in the spotlight is Kimmel's now infamous Taco Man skit, a rework of the Village People's classic Macho Man. Except this wasn't just a harmless spoof. Kimmel transformed the campy disco anthem into a searing satire aimed directly at the former president, branding him as boastful, clueless, and, let's be honest, generally unfit for the role of macho anything. The lyrics took aim at Trump's immigration policies, throwing in references to bad spray tans and questionable eating habits. It wasn't just a parody, it was a roast set to music, and Trump, famously thin-skinned, didn't get the joke. The performance aired on Kimmel's late night show and was immediately clipped and shared across social media. It caught fire faster than one of Trump's own 2 a.m. Twitter rants. Within hours, people were posting their own versions and hashtagging Taco Man alongside memes that turned Trump's exaggerated pomp into a punchline. Some featured animated GIFs of Trump dancing awkwardly to the beat. Others remixed the song into different musical genres. It was peak internet chaos, and sure, it was funny to most.
In 2018, Donald Trump, who was at that time president of the United States, was so upset about my jokes that I made about him, he directed his staffers at the White House to call Disney to tell them to rein me in. And I had like 80 texts when I woke up sending me this article from Rolling Stone. It says, Trump White House pressured Disney to censor Jimmy Kimmel. Now, Disney is the company that owns ABC, our network, and Jimmy Kimmel is. The report says at least 2 calls were made from the Trump White House to, quote, convey the president's anger regarding Kimmel's monologues and jabs. In other words, President Karen demanded to speak to my manager.
But behind the scenes, absolute mayhem. Turns out the comedy hit a little too close to home. As viral as the parody's impact might have been online, the real drama unfolded behind closed doors, with reports claiming Trump's White House went into damage control mode. Allegedly, there were multiple calls, yes, actual phone calls, placed to Disney, ABC's parent company. Imagine that, a sitting president rallying his team not about foreign policy, not a national emergency, but a late-night comedian with a decent falsetto mocking his brand. The word was that Kimmel needed to be reined in, as if a corporation like Disney could act as Trump's personal bouncer, guarding him from mean jokes. The irony here couldn't be thicker. Trump, who has spent years ridiculing everyone from global leaders to disabled reporters, suddenly couldn't handle some lyrics and a dance routine. This is the same man who called Rosie O'Donnell a pig and mocked Greta Thunberg for being too young and passionate about climate change. Yet toss on a sparkly mariachi outfit, sing Taco Man, and apparently it's game over. The fragile ego on display didn't just spark online chatter, it bolstered Kimmel's critique. Kimmel knew exactly what nerves he struck. He later quipped that Trump's reaction was proof of his inability to laugh at himself, someone who can hand out criticism but crumbles into a pile of orange jello at the first sign of ridicule. It wasn't the first time Trump's love for holding grudges over jokes betrayed his tough guy image. Remember his bizarre meltdown over jokes about his overly long tie, or how his blue suit at the Pope's funeral left him trending for days after people likened him to a Monopoly board piece. Just add Taco Man to the growing list of instances where the comedy wasn't the issue. Trump's handling of it was. Comedy works because it highlights truth, and here, Kimmel wasn't inventing anything out of thin air. The parody tapped into long-standing critiques about Trump's ego, his inability to take criticism, and his obsession with optics. And just like that, a silly late-night sketch morphed into a mockery of his entire image. It was no longer just about laughing at Trump, it was about laughing at the cracks forming in the armor he desperately tried to polish. What's wild is that Taco Man didn't just stay a passing joke, it became a small but powerful symbol of Trumpian fragility. That a president once marketed as strong could crumble over a parody gave people something deeper to latch onto, and maybe even feel empowered by. The sheer disconnect between branding yourself as untouchable while crumbling over satire practically wrote its own punchlines. Kimmel didn't just embarrass Trump, he unintentionally provided a cultural shorthand of sorts. Anytime someone described Trump supporters touting his toughness, people could point to Taco Man and say, "Really?" The situation didn't just end with phone calls or memes though. Don Jr., Trump's oldest son and self-proclaimed family protector, decided to get involved, making things even more ridiculous. You'd think the Trump family would have learned the Barbra Streisand effect by now. Try too hard to squash criticism and you'll make it bigger. Yet here came Don Jr., stepping in and dragging the whole controversy into an even larger spectacle. It wasn't enough to quietly fume at Kimmel from the sidelines. He had to take it a step further. And that's where the story really picks up. If you thought a hit parody and frantic Disney phone calls were peak absurdity, just wait. Don Jr.'s response moved the chaos from satire to surreal. And trust me, it only got weirder from there. Did Don Jr. actually try to call the cops over a joke about tacos? Well, not quite, but his reaction wasn't much less embarrassing. After Jimmy Kimmel's Taco Man parody lit up television screens and practically became a meme factory online, Don Jr. decided this was his moment to leap into action. Forget the family's long history of dishing out ridicule. This had to be stopped. According to multiple reports, Don Jr. directly contacted Disney, itching to censor Kimmel like it was some urgent matter of national security. Just picture it. A grown man notorious for his smug social media posts about being tough, calling up Mickey Mouse's bosses to complain about a parody song. The absurdity of it all is hard to overstate. Don Jr., who has spent years carefully cultivating this image of himself as a straight-talking alpha male, crumbled over a disco-inspired sketch about tacos. And here's the thing, doesn't this make his public persona a little hard to take seriously? This is the same guy who loves to call people snowflakes, yet a late-night comedian's harmless jabs sent him running to the proverbial complaint department. It's ironic enough to almost write itself, but Kimmel wasn't going to let it stop there. You see, at the same time all of this was happening, Don Jr. was knee-deep in his family's $250 million fraud trial. A high-profile courtroom drama isn't exactly the best backdrop for throwing tantrums over tacos. During the trial, Don Jr. famously told the court, "I'm not an accountant," as if that somehow excused him from understanding the shady financial dealings he was tied to. Kimmel took this and ran with it, working the line into his monologues with ease, like plucking ripe fruit off a low-hanging tree. Night after night, Kimmel picked apart Don Jr.'s testimony, zeroing in on how absurd it was for someone directly involved in managing the family's empire to basically say, "Don't look at me, I don't do math." Kimmel poked fun at the trial by comparing it to one of those sitcom situations where a character does everything they can to avoid responsibility, except in this version, Don Jr. was blaming the accountants, the paperwork, the system, anyone and anything but himself. For anyone watching, it was equal parts hilarious and revealing. Kimmel blended his jokes about the trial with the Disney drama, drawing a vivid picture of a man hopelessly trying to control narratives from every angle. Don Jr. and tacos. Who would have thought that's where the week's comedy gold would come from? The feud between Kimmel and Don Jr. only escalated from there. Kimmel started tying Don Jr.'s courtroom antics into his late-night jabs, adding moments that could make a PR consultant break out in a cold sweat. For someone who tried so hard to craft an image of being untouchable, Don Jr. suddenly looked a lot like the guy who couldn't get a refund without asking to speak to a manager. And speaking of managers, Kimmel didn't shy away from comparing the whole ordeal to Trump Sr.'s own love for handing out mockery, only to crumble when the tables are turned. Whether it was playground insults at political rivals or mocking a disabled reporter at a rally, Trump Sr. had built his brand on dishing it out without a second thought. The problem, the family motto apparently doesn't include handling it when it comes back their way. This whole debacle wasn't just amusing, it was a case study in how the Trump family handles critique. The fact that a parody, one song, running barely a few minutes, provoked this degree of reaction speaks volumes. It's not just thin skin, it's a full-on obsession with controlling public perception. Whether it's lawsuits, tweets, or phone calls to Disney, their approach to avoiding ridicule only amplifies it. And if Don Jr.'s involvement was intended to fix the problem, it backfired harder than one of his dad's draft tweets accidentally hitting send. By the time Kimmel was done weaving Don Jr.'s trial and the Taco Man fiasco into his comedy, the points practically made themselves. On one hand, the Trumps claim strength, toughness, and the ability to outsmart critics. On the other, they can't stop tripping over their own attempts to silence even the smallest slights. Kimmel didn't just mock Don Jr., he exposed how the family's desperate need to maintain power and influence created self-inflicted wounds. The more they reacted, the less untouchable they seemed. Irony, as it turns out, isn't just a comedian's best friend, it's the Achilles heel of the Trump universe. And the aftermath? Well, if you thought phone calls to Disney were where this absurd tale ended, just wait until you hear how Trump Sr.'s late-night obsession with controlling the narrative only made things worse. If anything, the Taco Man saga proved that you can try to silence comedy, but it has a way of biting back harder and louder than you'd ever expect. Irony isn't just funny, it's powerful. The Trump family's obsessive need to shield themselves from ridicule gave Kimmel's satire an even sharper edge. Every attempt to control the narrative, whether through phone calls, complaints, or public outbursts, only amplified the very jokes they wanted to bury. It's a classic case of trying to stop the fire, but accidentally pouring gasoline on it. Satire thrives on moments like this because it cuts through hollow images and exposes the flaws underneath. So, if anything, comedy is doing its job. What's your favorite Kimmel moment? Drop it in the comments and keep laughing.